My name is Olivia, and I'm 29 years old. If there's one thing I've learned in life, it's how to disappear in plain sight, especially when the people who are supposed to love you the most look right past you. I grew up in a well-decorated home in West Haven, a city where appearances matter more than truth. My mother, Linda, ran the house like a showroom. Everything had to be spotless, curated, controlled, including her children. My father, Frank, was quieter but no less demanding. He cared about reputation, results, and raising the perfect family. But perfection, in their eyes, always had one name: Madison. Madison was my younger sister, 2 years behind me, and from the moment she could walk, she was their star. Her laugh was adorable, her messes were playful, and even her tantrums were charming. When I did the same things, I was too moody, too emotional, or simply too much. Birthdays were the worst. I still remember turning 15 and watching Madison blow out candles on a cake that had my name misspelled. I told myself I didn't care. I got used to the background, the shadows. I tried to earn their love by being responsible, independent, and excellent at school. I became the quiet achiever. No one noticed. Sometimes I wondered if I had imagined it all. Maybe I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew. When Madison failed a math test, Mom stayed up with her all night to help. When I brought home a scholarship letter, she said, "Don't show off in front of your sister." That's when I stopped showing anything. Looking back, I think I became addicted to the silence. It was safer than hoping for a reaction and getting disappointment in return. By the time I was 17, I had stopped expecting fairness. I didn't wait for birthday cards anymore, or hope for my parents to ask how my day was. I had learned that in our home, only one daughter mattered, and it wasn't me. Madison, with her picture-perfect smile and carefully curated life, had grown into our parents' prized possession. She was charming, social, and effortlessly manipulative, though my parents never seemed to notice the last part. She could lie, fail, or throw tantrums, and Linda would defend her like a queen protecting her heir. I, on the other hand, became the family's quiet worker. I poured my energy into school, books, and responsibilities no one had asked me to take on. I cooked when Mom was busy, cleaned when she was tired, and made sure not to be in the way when guests were over. I had mastered the art of vanishing emotionally, physically, and mentally, and I did it well. When I graduated high school with honors, I didn't even get a family dinner. But when Madison posted a picture online of herself standing next to a celebrity at a concert, Linda shared it everywhere, bragging as if Madison had won an Olympic gold medal. I never hated my sister, at least not then. I just stopped trying to understand why I didn't deserve the same love. My father, Frank, once told me, "You're stronger than your sister. She needs more support." I remember blinking at him, speechless, as if strength justified abandonment. Eventually, I left for college on a partial scholarship, packed my things in silence, and moved into a small dorm without anyone to wave goodbye. And even then, Madison cried. She said I was being dramatic. She said I was trying to get attention. Linda agreed. Frank didn't say anything. In college, I finally felt something like peace. I made friends, real ones, and focused on my future. I found comfort in structure, in deadlines and assignments that came with recognition. I studied literature and editing, finding my voice in words even when I couldn't use it at home. But even from miles away, the family dynamics never changed. Madison remained the golden daughter, and I remained the invisible one. I still called home out of duty, and every time I did, the conversation always turned to her new boyfriend, her latest party, her new haircut. I listened, nodded, smiled into the silence. I had long accepted my role. But deep down, something had started to shift, a small flicker of awareness. I didn't have to live this way forever. I didn't have to keep playing a role in a story I never agreed to be part of. It was a Thursday afternoon, just over 2 weeks before Madison's wedding. I had just finished an intense manuscript review at the office. I remember the weight of the folder in my lap as I sat in my car, parked at a red light downtown. The sky was a dull gray, the kind that makes everything feel slower. I was exhausted but satisfied. The publishing house had just shortlisted me for a senior editing role. It wasn't final, but it was something earned without applause. Then, without warning, my entire world shattered. A thunderous crash, metal twisting against metal, glass flying like rain. I didn't even have time to scream. I was slammed forward into the steering wheel, then jolted sideways. My vision blurred. Everything spun, and the world went black. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in a hospital bed, tubes running from my arms, the soft beep of a monitor filling the silence. My head throbbed, and my legs felt like they were buried under bricks. Panic crawled up my throat as I tried to move. That's when a soft voice spoke beside me. "Hey, don't try to sit up yet." I turned my head slowly. A nurse, young, kind-eyed, with a name tag that read Ava, offered a small smile. "You're safe. You were in a car accident. You've been unconscious for a day, but you're stable now." The words hit me in slow motion. I tried to ask what had happened, but my mouth was dry and everything hurt. She gently explained, 2 broken legs, several cracked ribs, a mild concussion. They were still running tests. And then came the words that stayed with me. "The driver who hit you fled the scene. A hit and run." Something inside me went cold. I had been stopped at a red light. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't careless. Someone had rammed into my car and left me there, broken, unconscious, helpless. In the following days, I learned the details. The impact had crushed the driver's side of my vehicle. The police had recovered debris from the scene but hadn't tracked down the vehicle yet. My body felt like it was stitched together with needles and weight. Even turning my head sent waves of pain down my spine. I was confined to that hospital bed, trapped in silence, once again. Only this time, it wasn't emotional, it was physical. I couldn't walk. I couldn't get up. I couldn't leave. And still, no one from my family came. I told myself they didn't know yet. I told myself Madison must be busy with wedding planning, and Mom must be helping her. I told myself Frank would come after work. I told myself stories because the silence was too loud. But I knew the truth. I had always known it. I wasn't their priority, not even now. 5 days passed before I saw either of my parents. I was sitting upright in bed, a pillow behind my back, an IV dripping slowly into my arm. Ava had just helped me brush my hair and freshen up when the door opened. First came the familiar scent, my mother's overpowering floral perfume. Then her sharp heels clicking on the tile. Behind her, my father, as stiff and composed as ever. Linda wore a pearl necklace, a designer blazer, and a look of forced sympathy. Frank had on a navy suit, tied perfectly straight. They looked like they were attending a meeting, not visiting their injured daughter. "Still reading?" Linda's voice was crisp, judgmental, as her eyes landed on the open book in my lap. "It's work," I replied quietly. "Manuscripts." "Of course it is," she muttered. "Always working." She walked over, looked around the room disapprovingly, and sat down like she didn't want to touch anything. Frank didn't even say hello. He went straight to the point. "The doctors say you'll be discharged in a couple of weeks." I nodded. "Yes, but I'll need a wheelchair. And rehab." "The pain's still," I exhaled, trying to stay calm. "Still very bad." "Well," he said, "Madison's wedding is in 3 weeks. You'll make it in time." I blinked. "You're joking. I'm in no condition to attend a wedding." Linda raised her voice slightly. "It's your sister's special day. You need to be there, Olivia. She's the bride. All eyes will be on her," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I'll still be in a wheelchair. I can barely sit for 20 minutes without pain. The doctor said I need rest." "Excuses," Frank cut in. "When I was your age, I worked the day after I tore my ACL. You've always used pain to avoid responsibility." I looked at them, stunned. Were they really here to guilt-trip me into attending a wedding instead of checking if I was okay? My chest tightened. My throat burned. "You don't even care that I was hit by a car and left unconscious in the street." "You're being dramatic," Linda snapped. "Everything's always about you, isn't it?" "I've been here for days," I said, voice trembling. "Where were you? Why didn't you visit? Why didn't you?" "Because we were planning your sister's wedding," she barked. "She's stressed enough without you adding to it." Something broke inside me. I was almost killed. Linda stood up, face red, eyes wild. Enough. And then it happened. In one sudden, horrifying motion, she grabbed the blood pressure monitor from the side table, a hard plastic device still attached to its wires, and hurled it at me, striking the side of my head. A sharp pain tore through my skull. I cried out, blood already trickling from my temple. The machine hit the floor with a heavy thud. Ava burst through the door a second later, followed by a security guard who had been down the hall. "What's happening here?" "She hit me," I whispered, dazed. "Step back right now," the guard ordered Linda. Frank moved toward the door. "This is a misunderstanding." "Don't move, sir," the guard warned. Ava pressed the emergency call button, and 2 more hospital staff rushed in. In the chaos, Linda tried to speak, her voice suddenly soft. "I didn't mean to." "You assaulted a patient," the security officer snapped. "This is now a police matter." Within 10 minutes, 2 uniformed officers arrived. Linda and Frank were arrested right there in my hospital room, handcuffed in front of me. They didn't fight. Frank looked stunned. Linda tried to cry, real or fake, I didn't care. They were escorted out, and I was left shaking, holding a cold cloth against my bleeding head. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just ignored. I was hurt. And finally, someone saw it. I stayed in the hospital overnight for observation after the attack. The doctors ran a CT scan to make sure there was no serious internal injury from the blow to my head. Ava stayed late, far past her shift, just to sit beside me. She kept pressing ice against the side of my face and whispering, It didn't deserve that. None of it." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just lay there in silence, watching the sterile white ceiling and wondering how far a person has to fall before their family notices the bruises they leave behind. The next morning, around 9 a.m., Ava returned with breakfast, oatmeal, apples, and some orange juice. "You've got a visitor waiting in the hallway," she said gently. "He said his name is Jason." I froze. Jason. I hadn't seen him in almost 2 years. We'd grown up in the same neighborhood, gone to the same school, shared books, jokes, and heartbreaks. He had been the only one in my life who ever truly saw me. When college pulled us in different directions, our connection faded, but I had never forgotten the way he made me feel safe. "I asked him to wait," Ava added. "I wasn't sure if you were up for it." "No," I said quietly. "Send him in." A minute later, the door opened, and there he was, taller than I remembered, in a gray hoodie and jeans, his dark hair messier than usual. But his eyes, they still held the same kindness I remembered from years ago. "Hey," he said softly, stepping inside. I smiled, a little awkward. "Hey." He glanced around, then pulled the chair closer. "You look like you've been through a war." I felt like it too. There was a long silence. Then I finally exhaled and looked at him seriously. "I need your help, Jason." He didn't blink. "Say the word." "I want to go to Madison's wedding." I know it sounds insane. I'm bruised, broken, and barely mobile. But I need to be there. Not for her. For me. I have to tell the truth. I have to say what they never let me say. Jason leaned forward. "Are you sure?" I nodded slowly. "I'm done being quiet. I need you to help me get there. Wheelchair, painkillers, whatever it takes." He looked at me carefully, something flickering behind his eyes. Then he said, "I was going to come see you anyway. There's something I need to tell you, too." I tilted my head slightly. "What is it?" He hesitated, just for a second. "It's about your accident. There's something you don't know. And I think you need to hear it. But not yet. First, let's get you strong enough to stand in front of them and speak your truth." My breath caught. It wasn't just support he was offering. It was something more. Something deeper. And I knew I wouldn't be walking into that wedding alone. The day of the wedding arrived faster than I expected. I hadn't slept much the night before. Too many thoughts racing through my head, too many memories crowding the silence. The hospital staff had cleared me for discharge under one condition: limited movement, pain managed by medication, and full support. I agreed, without hesitation. Jason had already taken care of everything. He brought me a simple but elegant navy blue dress that could fit around my casts. Ava, bless her heart, helped me get ready, doing my hair, applying light makeup to cover the bruising near my hairline. "Are you sure about this?" she asked as she fastened my bracelet. "I've never been more sure about anything," I whispered. Jason wheeled me out of the hospital with steady hands. We didn't speak much on the way there. He glanced at me often through the rearview mirror, his eyes filled with quiet reassurance. I clutched the small note card in my lap, the one with my speech, though I didn't know if I'd follow it. The wedding venue was a grand hotel in downtown West Haven, full of chandeliers, white roses, and polished marble floors. Guests were already arriving, dressed in flowing gowns and sharp tuxedos, smiling for photos as if the world was perfect. No one there knew that the bride's parents were already behind bars. Jason parked near the side entrance. "They've arranged for a ramp," he said. "But if there's any issue, I've got you." He helped me into the wheelchair and guided me through the side corridor. Inside, the air was heavy with perfume, laughter, and polite whispers. Heads turned as we entered. Some guests recognized me. Others just stared. A woman in a wheelchair, visibly injured, flanked by a man with determination in his stride. I could feel the murmurs already starting. "She's Madison's sister? What happened to her? Isn't she supposed to be recovering?" We entered the grand ballroom, where the ceremony was minutes away from beginning. Rows of white chairs filled the space. The aisle was lined with flower petals, leading to an arch where Eric, the groom, stood stiffly. He looked handsome but distracted. Jason leaned close to me and whispered, "You're stronger than all of them, Olivia." I nodded once, silently. That's when I saw Madison. She was radiant in her white dress, every strand of hair in place, her makeup flawless. She noticed me instantly, and for a split second, her smile faltered. But then, she turned away and continued posing for photos. She wasn't surprised I was here. She was annoyed. As the ceremony began, I felt the tension in the room shift. Jason gently pushed me forward to a spot near the front row. I saw Susan, the groom's mother, seated near us. She looked at me, really looked, and offered a small nod. I couldn't tell if it was sympathy, curiosity, or respect. Maybe all three. The officiant welcomed everyone. The music began. Madison walked down the aisle, clutching Frank's cousin's arm instead of our father's. No one explained why her real parents were absent. The lie hung in the air like perfume, sweet, strong, and suffocating. As vows were exchanged, I sat in silence, hands folded in my lap. I wasn't here to stop the wedding. I was here to stop pretending. The ceremony ended with applause, camera flashes, and forced laughter. I stayed still in my seat, feeling every second stretch like an eternity. Jason stood behind me, one hand resting lightly on the wheelchair handles. He hadn't said a word since we entered, just stayed close, like a quiet shield. Guests began moving toward the adjoining reception hall. Champagne flutes clinked. The band started playing soft jazz. Waiters floated between conversations with trays of sparkling drinks. Everyone was trying hard to pretend that the bride's parents hadn't missed the biggest day of her life. I knew it was time. We entered the reception area slowly. Jason maneuvered my chair to a discreet corner table where I could still see the stage. The place was gorgeous, gold drapes, tall candles, floral centerpieces at every table. A photographer hovered near Madison and Eric, snapping pictures as they greeted guests. Madison's eyes darted toward me a few times. She never smiled. Then the master of ceremonies stepped up with a wireless mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "we'll now invite a few members of the family to offer their congratulations to the newlyweds. First, let's hear from the bride's sister, Olivia." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't been told I would be speaking. Jason squeezed my shoulder gently. "You've got this." I took a deep breath and nodded. He wheeled me forward, stopping just before the stage. The MC bent down and handed me the microphone. Everyone turned to look. I swallowed hard. For a moment, I could hear only my heartbeat. Then I raised the mic and began to speak, voice shaking but steady. "Good evening," I said, eyes scanning the crowd. "Some of you may not know me well. I'm Olivia, Madison's older sister. And I didn't come here today for photo op. I came to speak the truth." The room fell silent. I wasn't supposed to be here. 2 weeks ago, I was in a car accident. I was hit while stopped at a red light by someone who never stopped to check if I was alive. I was hospitalized. Both of my legs broken, cracked ribs, a concussion. Whispers broke out across the room. But when my parents finally came to visit me in the hospital, they didn't come to ask how I was doing. They came to tell me I had to attend this wedding, no matter what condition I was in. When I refused, my mother got angry. She picked up a medical device and threw it at my head. Gasps echoed through the crowd. I was bleeding. I screamed. That's when the nurse and security came in. And that's why they're not here today, because they were arrested for what they did to me. The crowd was frozen. Even the music had stopped. My entire life, I've been quiet. I've been polite. I've been invisible. While my sister was the golden child, I was the one told to be strong. To stop complaining. I was taught to make myself smaller, so she could shine brighter. I looked straight at Madison. She was pale. Her hands clutched the edge of the table. But today, I am not shrinking. Today, I am not hiding. Because I've realized silence helps no one. I paused, then softened my voice. To Madison, I hope this marriage brings you the happiness I never had. But I will no longer protect people who hurt me just because they share my blood. I handed the mic back, and the applause started. Slow at first, then louder. People stood. Others wiped their eyes. Jason stepped forward and wheeled me gently back to my seat, where I sat shaking, not from fear, but from release. For the first time, I had spoken. And for the first time they had listened. I was still catching my breath when Jason gently whispered, "Are you okay?" I gave the smallest nod. My speech had taken more from me than I expected, not physically, but emotionally. A lifetime of silence broken in 7 minutes. 7 minutes that had left the entire room in stunned quiet. Then Jason stepped forward. I watched, unsure of what he was doing, as he walked to the front, calm, steady, but with fire in his eyes. The master of ceremonies looked confused, but handed him the microphone without question. Jason cleared his throat and spoke with a quiet firmness that carried to the farthest walls of the ballroom. I didn't plan to speak today, but there's something that needs to be said and heard. Everyone's eyes shifted from him to me and back again. My name is Jason, and I've known Olivia since we were children. I'm here because she asked me to help her attend today. But I'm also here because of something else, something I can no longer keep to myself. He paused for just a beat. Madison stiffened. Eric looked at her, confused. I work with a private legal investigator, Jason continued. 2 weeks ago, I was working late downtown. On my way out of the office, I witnessed a serious car accident. A vehicle ran a red light at full speed and struck another that was stopped. The driver didn't stop. They fled. The whispers returned, louder now. I reported the license plate number I caught to the authorities. Yesterday, I followed up. That vehicle was traced to a garage outside the city. It was under repair for a front-end collision. He turned to look directly at Madison. The car is registered to you. Madison's face went white. Her hand trembled as she reached for Eric's arm. That's not true, she said in a shaking voice. That can't be. Jason held up a printed document. Garage receipt. Time-stamped. Under your name. And GPS data from your phone places you within 2 blocks of the intersection when the crash occurred. A heavy silence dropped over the room. Olivia was the victim in that hit and run, Jason said. She was left unconscious, bleeding, and broken in her car. And the person responsible was her own sister. Madison stood up suddenly, her voice rising in panic. It wasn't intentional. I didn't know she was there. I panicked. Eric stepped back from her like she was radioactive. You hit your sister and left her to die? No, no, I didn't mean to. He shook his head. You never even told me. Jason wasn't done. And Olivia's parents? They knew. They helped cover it up. Took the car to a private repair shop and told no one. That's why they're in jail, not just for assault, but for obstruction of justice. A collective gasp rose through the guests. Several stood from their seats. Susan, Eric's mother, put her hands to her face, visibly shaken. The venue was now chaos. Phones were pulled out. Whispers turned to outrage. Then came the final blow. Two uniformed officers, who had been standing in the back quietly, stepped forward. Madison Walker? One of them said. You're under arrest for felony hit and run, reckless endangerment, and failure to report a criminal offense. The room froze. Madison tried to say something, anything, but the officers had already taken her by the arms and read her rights. Eric stood there, stunned, his wedding ring hanging loosely on his finger. He slipped it off, quietly, deliberately, and placed it on the table. As they led Madison out of the ballroom, I sat there, not smiling, not triumphant, just breathing. For the first time in my life, the truth wasn't just mine. It belonged to everyone in that room. The courtroom smelled like old wood and tension. Weeks had passed since the wedding, but the sting of betrayal hadn't faded. I sat in my wheelchair beside Jason, both of us quiet as the bailiff called the court to order. The headlines had already circulated. Bride arrested at her own wedding, and the city buzzed with whispers about the shattered family beneath the polished surface. I didn't care about the gossip. I wanted the truth recognized where it mattered most, under oath, before the law. Linda and Frank sat at the defense table, both looking drained and pale. For once, Linda's makeup didn't hide the fear in her eyes. Frank wouldn't even look at me. Madison sat apart, in a separate hearing, facing felony charges. Her trial was happening next door, but we'd all been linked, and this day would settle what they tried so hard to bury. Jason had helped me file charges for assault, hospital attack, conspiracy to obstruct justice, evidence tampering, emotional and physical trauma. I testified calmly, truthfully. I didn't dramatize or exaggerate. I just told the story, my story, the way it really happened. The judge, a stern but fair woman named Judge Carter, listened intently. Jason presented the medical reports. Ava, my nurse, gave testimony. Security footage from the hospital was shown. Jason also submitted the repair shop receipt and phone records, proving that Linda and Frank had knowingly concealed Madison's actions. When Jason closed with his final words, I felt something stir in me. Not just hope, but power. This case is not just about bruises and broken bones, he said. It's about years of silence, about a family system that rewarded one child with protection and punished the other with isolation. Today, this court has the chance to acknowledge that silence does not equal peace, and that no one, no matter their title or blood, is above the law. The room remained still as the judge took a breath. Then came the verdicts. Linda Walker, guilty of assault and obstruction. Frank Walker, guilty of conspiracy to conceal a felony. Sentencing followed immediately. Both were sentenced to 18 months in state prison, with no possibility of early parole. A separate order was issued for mandatory therapy and community service after release. As the gavel struck, Linda broke into sobs. Frank bowed his head, but said nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I simply watched as they were taken away, not out of vengeance, but resolution. An hour later, we were outside the courthouse. The sun was out, warm against my skin. Jason stood beside me, his tie loosened, his expression gentle. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My breath caught. Olivia, he said softly, I've watched you fight battles no one should face alone. You've shown more courage than anyone I've ever met. And I don't want to be just your friend or your witness. I want to be your home. He opened the box. Inside was a simple, elegant ring, understated, but full of meaning. Will you marry me? Tears welled in my eyes, not from pain, but release. The kind of tears that come when you realize you're finally seen, finally safe. I whispered, yes. 1 year later, I walked across the park without a cane. The wind carried the scent of cherry blossoms, soft pink petals falling around me like a quiet celebration. Jason sat waiting on a bench beneath a tree, his hand resting gently on his knee, a smile playing on his lips the moment he saw me. I still can't believe you're walking like that, he said, standing as I approached. I smiled. Neither can my physical therapist. We sat together, watching the families pass, the kids laughing near the fountain. My legs still ached on colder days, but I didn't need painkillers anymore. The scars were fading, on my body and in my heart. So much had changed. After the trial, I took a few months to focus solely on recovery. Jason moved in with me temporarily, but by the time spring arrived, we both knew it wasn't temporary anymore. We got married in a quiet ceremony by the lake. No matching dresses. No staged photos. Just people who loved us and a small circle of peace. I'd returned to work at the publishing house, now as an associate editor. My boss had held my position, and to my surprise, the team welcomed me back with respect, not pity. But the biggest change was the book. Invisible No More, a true story of silence, survival, and strength. It was mine, written, edited, and published under my name. It became a quiet bestseller. People emailed me, messaged me, even stopped me at cafes to say, "Thank you. That was my story, too." And Madison? She was sentenced to 3 years in prison. She served just under 2, was released under strict parole, and ordered into court-mandated therapy. We haven't spoken since. Her silence used to haunt me. Now, it sets me free. As for Linda and Frank, they tried to reach out after their release. Letters. Voicemails. Apologies. I read 1 or 2. They said they were sorry, that they never saw what they were doing. But I had learned something important. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's choosing peace for yourself, whether or not the other person understands your pain. So no, I didn't go back. I didn't rebuild what was never whole. I moved forward, with Jason by my side, not as a survivor, but as a woman who rebuilt her life piece by piece. Jason turned to me on the bench. They reached out again, didn't they? I nodded. You okay? I am, I said. I'm really okay. We sat in silence for a while, letting the moment stretch out like a page that didn't need to be written anymore. I looked down at my ring, sunlight dancing across its surface, and for the first time in my life, I felt it, completely and without doubt. Freedom, not the kind you run toward. The kind you build slowly, painfully, but permanently. If you felt my story, if it touched your heart even a little, then please take a moment to leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means more than you know. Thank you for listening to my voice.